Really appreciate your question because, like you, my philosophy is not a finished product. I don't have a system to really spell out. I'm just describing a perspective, and that activity of description, it's an ongoing process. And I think I make the most progress interacting with others because their ideas are, they have separate origins. You know, it's another person's perspective, and if we can find common ground, it seems like well, our philosophies must be moving in the direction of truth, because you know, not that the more people that accept an idea, the more likely it is to be true, but if we're serious-minded people and we're really trying to think honestly, as rationally as we can, about what we know, I would think that more often than not we'll move in the direction of greater understanding when we agree with each other than when we disagree. Not that disagreements don't also provide tremendous insight, but whatever the case may be, I appreciate the question, and I'm going to try to answer it. My perspective on the physical world, in short, is that yeah, it exists and we should take it seriously. But as is unfortunately always or maybe fortunately, always the case in philosophy, we always have to explain what we mean by these words. You know, I could just say, yeah, I'm a physicalist, because it's popular to be a physicalist today. You know, you're more likely to be accepted by people who take rationality and scientific empiricism seriously. So I don't want to just say, yeah, I'm a physicalist for that reason. I want to actually get into what I mean by physical. And, you know, to do that, let's just explore the etymology of the word and the history of its usage. I think the Greeks first really came up with it. Homer was the first one to use it, or at least physis, which is the Greek root of our word for physics and nature. Physis means, in Homer at least, sort of the way of nature. In the Greek philosophers, it became more about the laws of nature, the essences of nature, the logos of nature. Logos is also a Greek word. It just means the articulable order of the universe. In other words, our ability as rational minds to objectively describe the rational laws of the world. All the Greeks thought that there was this correspondence and relationship between the mind and the world. The mind is at home in the world. Later Western philosophy began to question whether this clear ability of the mind to know the world was really as simple and unproblematic as the Greeks assumed. But to go back to this word physis, though, it just means nature, the way of nature, until philosophers got a hold of it. And in Homer's thought, the way of thinking of physis or nature as just a way of becoming, I think the word has a lot in common with the Tao, from a tradition completely isolated from Greek thought, from Chinese religion or philosophy or thought. I mean, it's kind of hard to classify an Eastern system or method in terms of Western concepts, but Taoism, or the notion of Tao, it basically means the way of nature, and I think it has a striking resemblance to this original notion of what physical means, or what nature is, in the Homeric tradition, where we don't view nature as law-based and sort of determined by these underlying fundamental properties, whether they're mathematical or rational. We don't assume that there's only order in the universe. We also see that there's chaos. But not only do we recognize these two poles, we see that they go together. So the Tao, or the original Greek notion of physis, I think they mean outside nature, the world, and inside nature, consciousness, human experience, knowledge. It's all nature. So for a human being, say, Aristotle or Plato or Descartes or any modern day scientist or materialist, to say that there are laws of nature is to assume that we, as the observers, are somehow outside of that nature and able to not only describe nature but explain it, reveal its essence, as though we were outside of it. I think that understanding of physical, the laws of nature, I don't subscribe to that. Physical doesn't necessarily mean a world independent of the human mind. I think there is a physical world, there is nature, but we can't know it objectively. And I think you agree with this, Pyrrho, because you're all about knowledge being mediated by the senses, and the mind is embodied, and what we know is a function of how we behave and how we act, how we think together in our societies. It's not as though we have this magical faculty called the intellect or the logical mind that steps outside of all of that context and relationship to actually have a true understanding of the underlying laws of this whole process that could be spoken or somehow transcribed into a human language. That idea is problematic to me, and I think to you as well. So the physical world is what we are. We can't know what it is in its essence, because that would be knowing what we are in our essence. And think about if the mind knew what it was, we would have certain knowledge of everything. And this is basically what Descartes tried to articulate, that the mind does know what it is. I am a thought, and by thinking, I exist. Because I can doubt my senses, I exist separate from them. I am unconditioned by them somehow. But I think the problem with that attempt to separate the scientist from his or her observations, from nature, I think it ultimately fails, because we can never, in the end, get outside of the fact that life is actually nothing but a dream.